And we're back. Conor and Miles, we're back to preview the AFC. If you haven't listened to our NFC episode yet, you can find that anywhere you get your podcast. All right, AFC. Not as many QBs in the AFC, but still some very intriguing spots. A lot of receivers in the AFC, so I'm excited about that. For best drafts in the AFC, we'll start there. My favorite draft was probably the Indianapolis Colts. Just loved what they did, getting Latu. They add Adonai Mitchell, who obviously had some concerns in the process, but they add him with some pick in the 50s. They also get Tanner Bortolini, who's a decent guard. Yeah, I liked what the Colts did. I think they're going to have a very exciting offense. Outside of that, I mean, it's hard to ignore what the Chiefs did, getting Xavier Worthy, so I'll put them up there. I really like the Steelers draft, as much as it pains me to say that, but they get Fatanu, Roman Wilson. They add Peyton Wilson, who was a first-team All-American at linebacker at NC State last year. They had him in the third round, who I think could be very good. So those were my two favorites, were Steelers and the Colts.
I think you got it. Dude, I don't know how you didn't have the Chargers on there. I think the Chargers probably had one of just like the most, steady hit a double type drafts that you could have. Like, you get a tackle, you get your receivers late, and I actually really like the fact that Ladd McConkey went there. I think he's going to be a favorite target for Herbert. And in a weird way, I know they lost Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I actually kind of like their long-term outlook with adding at least Ladd McConkey right now. Brendan Rice, we'll see what he is. I don't really know if he has like NFL relevance, but his dad was Jerry Rice, so there's a chance. I like what you said. I think I like the Bills draft. And I like the Bills draft not necessarily because I love Keon Coleman. And I was going to say this in the NFC episode, but if you just flipped Xavier Legette and Keon Coleman, and Coleman was on the Panthers and Legette was on the Bills, I'd have a lot more love for Legette. It's more so that I like Josh Allen, and that's why I think that's a good pick. I think that they have another receiving weapon. He's not going to be Stephon Diggs, and I think if you think that, it's kind of ludicrous in my opinion. Like, he's a rookie. Stephon Diggs is a seasoned vet. But I actually like what they did. They maneuvered around the draft board. They traded back, and they still got a receiver that Josh Allen apparently wanted. So I think you got to give a little bit of kudos to them, even though it might not have seemed it in the moment. So Bills and Chargers for me.
Yeah, I like Keon Coleman better than Legette personally. But least favorite drafts. Least favorite draft in the AFC. I hated the Broncos draft. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
And I also did not love the
bad draft.
I did not love the Titans draft either. They obviously drafted Devondre Sweat, who had some concerns after, I think he got a DUI or something like that recently, and they take J.C. Latham in the first round. Just don't think they got a whole lot better, personally.
Dude, I would go same too. I mean, what I would say is I would almost put the Jags in that conversation, but I think that they have a lot of upside. I'm a homer, obviously. I think they have a lot of upside with some of their picks. The Titans draft makes no sense to me. Like, Devondre Sweat should have never gone where he went. After J.C. Latham, I think the rest of their draft is just bad, top to bottom. And the Broncos, it's all going to hinge on Bo Nix. Like, if Bo Nix is pretty good, they're going to have a good draft, right? But if Bo Nix isn't good at all, then this draft was even worse. You had no picks, and you didn't get any better anywhere. So we'll see, but I would go with those two a little bit more than where I would start to criticize some of the Jags decisions. So
the Jags, man. We'll start in the AFC South. We'll start with the Jags. Why not? Your team. You trade back. You get Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. You take Mason Smith in the second round, and then you follow it up with Jerrion Jones in the third and Javon Foster in the fourth. And you took Jordan Jefferson in the 4th as well.
Mm-hmm.
As just how are you feeling as a Jags fan? Did you enjoy what you got?
I mean, I think so. You don't want to weight it too much toward the first guy you take, but I wanted Brian. I think I texted you months ago, and I was like, dude, they're either going to take JPJ, BTJ, and I think your response was like, so many J's, dude. So I obviously really like Brian Thomas Jr. I think that when you talk about managing your roster from the perspective of, you let Calvin Ridley get away. Calvin Ridley is making a lot of money. The Jags paying him that money, I think, would have been stupid. I think the Titans paying him that money is also stupid. But you get a cost-controlled receiver with I think, a higher upside than Calvin Ridley has, in my opinion, after what I watched last season. So I really like that. After that, though, I do think the Jags reached on some guys. Like, I think Mason Smith, before the season was a highly touted first-round type of defensive tackle prospect. If he is that, from an athletic standpoint, he's incredible. Jarian Jones, great nickel corner. I think they need an outside guy. Foster's a good tackle for depth. So I just don't think that they took best player available on the consensus board. But again, if one of those guys that I just mentioned ends up being a starter for him, Mason Smith or Jarian Jones, the draft's going to look pretty good. So I like it. I don't necessarily – I'm not in love with everything they did just yet.
Yeah, I guess my one concern is, like, from what I know, Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis feel like they do the same thing.
Yeah, everybody's – I mean, like, they're outside speed, deep threat type of guys. I will say this, though. If you go back and you watch, like, the Jaden Daniels tape, and I mean, mostly when I say tape, I'm watching highlights. I'm not breaking down coach's film. But when you watch him throw the ball, I think Brian Thomas Jr. got missed a lot. And I think Jaden Daniels does not have as good of an arm as Trevor Lawrence does. But he beat people bad. And when he gets by you, I don't think it's just a college thing. I think he's faster than NFL secondaries. If he is more than just an outside deep threat or a comeback guy, this guy's got long-term potential to be pretty special in the league. I think I comp him to like a T. Higgins. And T. Higgins is a pretty relevant fantasy option, across his career so far. So I like the option. I mean, I will personally be drafting Brian Thomas Jr. everywhere, but that's because I'm a homer. But I actually see that as a pretty good pick. Like, I think it's a really smart pick league wide. Anybody would have done that.
Well, we've seen that Lawrence can support multiple top receiving options. They got a lot now. Evan Ingram has been a top 5 tight end in the past couple of years. Christian Kirk's been good. Yeah, we'll see. I'll be interested to see what routes they give Gabe Davis and Thomas. I just hope he's not just like the strictly clear out guy, like a George Pickens type receiver.
He's got to have more. I think they're going to have to work him on some slants. But I think, the biggest criticism of him is, well, he doesn't run the full route tree. I think that's kind of BS. I think he can actually run all the routes. I just think when you're playing across from Malik Neighbors, you don't have to, because you're going to set up stuff to get him the ball. So I'm interested to see what he looks like in more of like a maybe 1 or 2 featured role in an offense, which I think he can be. So,
yeah. Moving from the Jags, moving to the Texans. They added Cade Stover, tight end out of Ohio State. He's about the only guy that'll get any sort of fantasy relevance, but won't play that much outside of Schultz. So moving along from them, the Colts, obviously they have a couple. They have one big one. They take A.D. Mitchell in the 2nd round, add Anthony Gould, who's another receiver, in the 5th round. I'm really high on A.D. Mitchell. I have no idea what to think about all these character concerns and like mismanaged diabetes that caused him to drop down the board. I mean, it's just like, seems like a bit much to me, but the player I love. So I still think I'm taking a lot of shares of A.D. Mitchell. Obviously, Pittman's a target hog, so he might be used more as a deep threat initially, but I really like him. I think he could be a really, really good receiver in the league.
Dude, I mean, the way that he's talked about, if he'd had no off the field issues, I think he might have been a top 20 pick. So like his talent on the one side, it's like unquestioned. I think he's going to be an immediate red zone threat for them. My only hesitation, and I really do like the prospect, I get the off the field stuff. My only question is Anthony Richardson a sophisticated enough passer to support that many receivers in that offense? You know, I think Pittman's they have rapport. I think he's gonna be solid. Pittman actually had a really good season last year. You still have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. I
Josh
think Anthony
Downs had a
Richardson
good season too.
Downs has speed too. And I think there's just a lot of pieces there that's like, where does he fit? If he rises to the top and he's actually a number one guy, he's going to be a pretty special player. But I'm just not sure if Anthony Richardson. Let me put it this way: if A.D. Mitchell went to Justin Herbert, I'd have a whole different view of things, right? If he's playing on the Chargers, I'm talking about like a third or fourth round pick. Him with the Colts, I still think he's a back half of the draft type of guy. But I do see the talent, and I'm with you. I really do like the prospect.
Yeah. Titans, nobody fantasy relevant, so we'll skip them. Heading to Buffalo, we get another receiver here. Keon Coleman goes first pick in the second round. I personally think Dalton Kincaid will be the top target earner, and I think James Cook could very well be right behind him, just based on what we saw that offense look like at the end of last year. But I do think there's a possibility Keon Coleman catches 10-plus touchdowns this year. So I think he's very fantasy relevant. I would use a high dynasty pick on him, probably a first-round pick. Yeah, I like Keon Coleman, but I know he had some issues testing. But from every time I watched him, he seemed like a guy that was just a playmaker. So I'm confident he's going to be a good player.
I lean dynasty on him, especially this year. I don't know where I see his redraft value, but I'm with you. I mean, like his testing, like he didn't test as fast as he looked. I think he's just a bigger guy though. And once he gets going, he's hard to catch and he's actually pretty fast. So we'll see. I just don't think he's like a polished enough route runner like Diggs was. Like Diggs got open on stuff because he's an elite route runner in the league. I don't know if that's Keon Coleman. He's got the win with athleticism, but in the red zone, his size is something that's going to be a weapon for them. But ultimately, I think what this does is it makes Dalton Kincaid kind of fly at my board as a tight end. And I think that he's going to have more relevance playing out of that big slot position. So I don't know. We'll see with Keon Coleman. I'm not in love with him, but I don't hate it.
I feel like he's going to be like an in-between of Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. I think he can like stretch the field a little bit more than Diggs, but also like run better routes than Davis, or more routes, I should say.
I actually like
Josh Allen needs to throw to somebody, so I like him. The Miami Dolphins were pretty interesting. They take Jalen Wright in the fourth round, speedster out of Tennessee. Does that mean Raheem Mostert doesn't get any touches this year? I don't really know what to make of that backfield, but I think if Jalen Wright is able to get on the field, he's obviously a very attractive prospect.
What's interesting is because, like, if you remember last season with the Dolphins, Mostert and Achane, they were both fantasy relevant running backs. Like, at points in the season, if you put them in their lineup, they were very dominant players. So Miami's backfield is something that you have to think about. Like, I want some share, and maybe this is your entry point, getting Jalen Wright way later in the draft and hoping for an injury, or not hoping for an injury, but if that happens, he might have a path to being pretty special in that offense. So I like him, but then there's the other side of it's a crowded backfield, and I don't know how I feel about drafting into a crowded backfield either. So I'm kind of waiting to see on him right now.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I don't know. He's just intriguing. He's obviously a huge big play guy. Perfect Dolphin based on what they're looking to do. New England Patriots have
Wait, before you go
go
on, the two things I'm curious what you think about Malik Washington and Taj Washington, because they don't really have an established third guy in that offense. Obviously, Tyreek takes a lot of attention. We think Jalen Waddle is going to continue to blossom into this really great number 2 receiver. That might leave something open for whoever the third guy is to step up. And they did take a flyer on 2 receivers in the 6th and 7th round. makes you think, like, did they see something there where they're like, we could use this piece in our offense?
Yeah, well, first of all, they did sign Odell 3 days ago.
That's true. They picked up Odell.
So I think a lot of it depends on that. You still have Braxton Berrios on the roster, but I think they're very similar receivers. Malik's 5'8", 190, obviously very productive at Virginia, and Taj Washington's 5'10", 177. So obviously it'll be one or the other. Because I don't know which one it is, I don't think either are very relevant until you actually see production.
Yeah, I'm largely with you. And the Odell signing does kind of hurt him, but I think Odell's going to get hurt. Like, I mean, he's hurt every year.
Yeah,
anyway,
admittedly, I don't know much about Malik Washington and Taj Washington in terms of if they can play like outside and inside, but I think there obviously is an opening for that third receiving option. I just have no idea who that's going to be yet. So got to monitor those camp reports for that. The Jets take Malachi Corley in the 3rd round. I loved him as a prospect. I want to project the Jets to do good things, but the Jets they're the Jets, dude. It's hard to picture Aaron Rod, like 3 Jets receivers being like productive and like everything going smoothly over there. So I'm a bit hesitant, but I do think Corley could be super solid. Obviously, they have Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams who should be getting the majority of the touches. But if they use Corley like how people have compared him to Deebo Samuel, then he's obviously a valuable fantasy asset.
Yeah, he could be a pretty good pickup late in the season if that's him. What? Just a fun exercise, but like, what do you think about the Jordan Travis pickup? That's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you have Tyrod Taylor on the roster too. I feel like Jordan Travis is like the hope is Rodgers plays like 2 more years and Travis turns out to be like an actual player.
He's just small. He's just a little small for me. I just think it's interesting from a long-term fantasy outlook. It's like, is there anything there? Is he a guy that you just, you stash on your taxi squad right now and just keep him there and just let him sit? I don't know.
Again, it's the Jets. Like, even if he's the starter, what's he putting up, dude? But I do think if you like have no real needs and you're at the end of a rookie draft and you can stash him somewhere, I have no problem with that. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers goes down again this year, are you really going to have Tyrod start the entire rest of the season? I mean, he also gets injured left and right too. So,
hot take.
Yeah,
you've talked
me. Yeah, you've talked me into Jordan Travis being a viable target. Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. All right, we go to the AFC North. Go to Pittsburgh to start. They take Roman Wilson in the 3rd round. I like him. I think he does a lot of what Deontay Johnson did. I don't think he's nearly as good, but Pittsburgh should have a actual passing offense this year. So I like taking shares of basically any of the Steelers' skill position players.
Yeah, dude. I mean, Roman Wilson's a speed guy. I mean, he ran a 4.39. He's a fast dude. Russell Wilson's like best throws, I think, and everybody kind of like knows from his history, it's that moonshot deep ball throw. Like, he throws that deep ball pretty well. Russell Wilson did not have a bad season last year. Yeah. It's just Sean Payton hated him. I don't know if he's going to play all season. Like, I really don't. I don't think Russell Wilson's that great. But I do think Roman Wilson's got some outside fantasy value. And I think the reason the Steelers went for him is because, like, you got to get some control of your locker room. And from everything people say about Roman Wilson, he's an adult. Like, the dude's all about ball. You got George Pickens not blocking. You had Deontay Johnson's, whatever he was doing. I actually do really like Roman Wilson as like your last pick of the draft. Just throw him on there and see what happens, because there's a lot of playing time out there for him.
For sure. Cleveland Browns, they take Jamari Thrash out of Louisville in the 5th round. He could work his way onto the field, but they obviously traded for Judy. I don't think Elijah Moore is very good at this point. So, but The Browns, we won't know anything about the Browns until we see how Deshaun Watson is playing.
Yeah, I've got no comments on it. Like, I mean, I actually like Jamari. I think I texted you. I was like, Jamari Thrash is a guy that I'm looking out for Dynasty. Not anymore. I think if you're going to Cleveland, like, there's nothing that's good that's happening in that situation. So I'm out.
Yeah. Moving to the Bengals, they take Amarius Mims in the first round. He's a fucking beast, by the way. He's huge.
Massive, dude. He's a mountain.
And then someone that we texted about earlier this week, Jermaine Burton goes in the third round. I love him.
Love him. Dude, I'll spoil it now. He's my sleeper of the AFC. He's one of my I think that this guy, did you see the reports he's working with TJ Husmanzada? And Husmanzada like stamped him. He's like, no, let me tell you, this guy is really good. I know he's got off the field issues, but like they love him. And I think that's got the chance to kick T. Higgins out of town.
This is an offense that we've seen can routinely support 2 and sometimes even 3 legitimate fantasy options at wide receiver. Even with Higgins on the roster, I know Trenton Irwin slotted in to play slot right now, but I just don't see Burton not getting on the field this year. So I love him. And obviously Dynasty more so than redraft, but I think there's a very clear path to him being a legit wide receiver 2 in fantasy in a few seasons.
Where do you see him going in dynasty drafts? Because I think that's interesting. Like, where would you start to be like pulling the trigger on a guy like him in dynasty drafts?
Right around where you would take Roman Wilson. I think that's probably like end of second, early third.
Yeah, I think he slips into the third a little bit for me. But I do think, dude, if you think about Tyler Boyd, he actually has had fantasy relevance every season that he's been with Joe Burrow, right? Jermaine Burton's a better receiver than Tyler Boyd, in my opinion. He's not T. Higgins, I don't think, but I think his ceiling could be there. I'm intrigued by this. And I think if there was a place it would work, it might be Cincinnati. So I think he's a guy to keep your eye on.
Facts. From one sleeper to another sleeper, Baltimore Ravens, they take Rasheen Ali, running back out of Marshall in the 5th round. They also add Tez Walker, receiver out of UNC. I think Rasheen Ali is worth a flyer. I don't know if Derrick Henry is going to be able to stay healthy. Keaton Mitchell obviously coming off of a huge injury, and then Justice Hill is Justice Hill. So I like Rasheen Ali, and then I wouldn't fault you for taking a flyer on Tez Walker. I mean, outside of Zay Flowers, there's not another receiver on that roster that I'm like confident is going to be a starter long term for them.
The only hesitation I have on Tez Walker, and I do like him, I think that we saw at the end of the last season, Isaiah Likely's role is probably going to be increased. I think they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets because of how dynamic Andrews and him are. And I think that might squeeze out a receiver. Like, I mean, they still have Bateman, and I think Flowers is easy wide receiver 1, BC guy. So I just see it a little bit tough for him to see a lot of relevance, but I don't hate him. I think he's got a lot of speed.
When is the Rashad Bateman experiment going to end, dude?
It should have been over already, if we're being honest. You should not still have a chance in the league.
Every year I talk myself into like, oh, he could actually be good this year. He's only 26. You know, like I say that every year.
He's not good. He's not good, but like he's better than like the serviceable bench guys. So he's gonna keep getting an opportunity, but I don't know. It should have been over last year. They should not still have him on.
All right, moving to the AFC West, the Broncos, they take Bo Nix in the 1st round. They followed up with his teammate Troy Franklin in the 4th. I like Troy Franklin as a prospect. I think there's no reason he shouldn't get targets this year. I mean, they're rebuilding. Give him some looks. He has rapport with Bo Nix already, so I would use a dynasty pick on Franklin. Even in dynasty, I don't really want anything to do with Bo Nix. They also took Audric Estime, but I just don't see how he gets on the field. But I did like him as a running back prospect.
I like him too. I think it could be interesting with him because, like, I mean, there is a history of injury with Javonte Williams. I don't know how much of last season was the injury versus like their offense just not being good, but maybe there is more opportunity than we think there is. He's a Notre Dame guy. I'm not that excited about him. I do think Troy Franklin's going to be a starter, though. Like when you think about the Broncos receivers, it's going to be Sutton, Mims.
They signed Josh Reynolds this offseason, too.
Dude, Josh Reynolds. There was somebody in our dynasty league. I'm not going to give it away. Who was like, dude, you really want Josh Reynolds? Tried to make a trade with me, and I'm like, get out of my face. Don't try to dangle Josh Reynolds stock in front of me. That's not doing it for me. I think Troy Franklin's a better receiver than Josh Reynolds right now. So I like him. I think there's a path for him to be wide receiver too on that offense, which is going to be anemic. But
Broncos games are going to be tough to watch next year. The Chiefs, Chiefs obviously they trade into the first round. They swap picks with the Bills, and they pick up Xavier Worthy, who everyone was making the joke like, "What if Xavier Worthy goes to the Chiefs?" He actually goes to the Chiefs. He could be a legit wide receiver one right out the gate.
Yeah. Especially with Rashee Rice. Like I saw a rumor that he might miss half the season. I don't know if that's legit or not, but even if he doesn't, this guy's a first round. I think he's got to be a first round dynasty pick because he's playing with Mahomes. It's just the fact that, dude, if you get a good quarterback, I just am going to overrate you a little bit. I really like him there. Like that speed with Andy Reid, that's kind of scary. I think that might be a problem. That could be a serious – if he can catch the ball, that's going to be a serious problem for the rest of the league. The Bills might look stupid.
How do you see them using him and Hollywood Brown? I feel like they're very similar players.
I think Hollywood is like – I don't know why I feel this way. Maybe I'm wrong. The stats might prove me wrong. I feel like he can make more contested catches for a guy his size than you think he would. But I think overall, if you think about their offense last year, they didn't have a ton of speed, and the receivers were the talk of their team being the weak point. And I think they instantly just got better. If you tell me their three receivers for the season are Marquise Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, and then you get Rashee Rice back, I all of a sudden think they have a pretty good stable of receivers. So, and you're not even mentioning Kelsey, who's the GOAT tight end. Sorry, Patriots fans, who think it's Gronk. Whatever. But I don't know. I like the receiving core. I actually think that the Chiefs are going to be a pretty they're going to go back to being a more dynamic offense this year.
Yeah, I think Xavier Worthy's he's probably going to go top 6 or 7 in dynasty drafts, I would guess. Probably the third receiver off the board.
Let me throw this at you. I do think with the speed they put on the field, I'm going to upgrade Pacheco because he's going to see some lighter boxes with people trying to stay back on those receivers. And that dude's a battering ram. And I think he's going to go off this season.
I love when I see the Isaiah Stewart video every time. It's just like, it's just always referencing Pacheco. All right, moving to the Raiders. They take Brock Bowers with the 13th overall pick. They will be starting Gardner Minshew at quarterback most likely. I love Brock Bowers, the prospect. I don't love the fit. I do think he'll basically be Dalton Kincaid in Vegas. I'm not really worried about Mayer already being on the roster, like restricting his playing time. I really think they drafted him as a receiver, basically. So, yeah.
I'm with you. I don't love his rookie tight ends. Like we all just know, rookie tight ends don't go off, except for Laporta. Rookie tight ends don't go off. And for that reason, I'm going to just downgrade him. He also has Devontae Adams, which I do think they're going to get some separation from their receiving core. And I love Gardner Minshew. I think he's actually really underrated. I think he's a lot closer to Baker Mayfield than he is to like a backup, but I still do have questions about his throwing the ball. So like, I can't love the pick that much. So.
Right. And finally, moving to the Chargers. They take Joe Alt, 5th overall. He's fucking huge, by the way. I did not realize he was
massive. Did you see the video of him hugging his dad at the draft? His dad's a mountain. And his mom is, I mean, like, I'm not saying she's a big lady, but I mean, she's like I would not mess with her either. Like, that's a big family. They eat their vegetables.
Yeah, he was a tight end originally. I found that out the week before the
Dude, he
draft.
played quarterback in high school.
Yeah, it's
What?
absurd. Yeah.
It's absurd.
He's a guy that just went and bought a tractor with his signing bonus. Lad McConkey goes in the second round, and then they take Brendan Rice in the seventh. They also add Kamani Vidal, running back out of Troy, in the sixth round. I fucking love Lad McConkey. I think he should be a first round dynasty pick.
Wow. I'm not that far off. I think he's a top of the second round. If you're talking back half of the first round, I get that. But he's the best option that Herbert's going to have out there. So I'm with you. Like, if you think Herbert's a good quarterback, which everybody does, you have to kind of buy the Lad McConkey hype. And I do too. I think he's going to be pretty solid.
I also think he's going to be a starting receiver in redraft this season.
Wow. You think he's got like wide receiver 3 potential?
I think more than that. I think he could be a legit wide receiver too. I just don't see Quentin Johnson or Josh Palmer getting a ton of targets.
No.
I also wanted to mention, I think there's a chance Kamani Vidal can win this role. I mean, J.K. Dobbins hasn't played a full season since Vietnam, and Gus Edwards might score 20 touchdowns, but he's only going to get carries like within the 5-yard line.
I don't hate that either.
And I think with Jim Harbaugh, I think they're legit going to run the ball like 40, 45 times a game.
Well, that's the other reason that I kind of downgrade their receiving options, because I'm like, I think they're just going to turn around and hand the ball off. And if Herbert's only throwing the ball 25, 28 times a game, how much can Lad McConkey do? But I'm with you. I think that there's opportunity in that backfield. I just don't know enough about Vidal to really give an accurate description, but I'll take your word for it. Maybe he's a dude that I look at in Dynasty in the third round and just throw a flyer at, last couple picks of the draft. Or he's a pickup. Realistically, He's a pickup in Dynasty that nobody touches, and maybe you hit lightning in a bottle.
My real hope is that Justin Herbert's just like so good that Harbaugh realizes like, all right, like I have to actually throw the ball.
Right.
And because it's not going to be like Michigan, where you can't just run the ball 40 times a game and win. Like, it just doesn't work like that.
It definitely doesn't work like that.
All right, before we get out of here, favorite landing spots. Quarterback, I'll go anyone but Bo Nix. I actually hate the landing spot for both AFC quarterbacks. I don't know if you like Drake or Nick. If you had to take May or Nix, you're taking May, right?
From what perspective? Like from a long-term perspective? Yeah, I don't know.
I guess for redraft, technically, I guess Nix could have more value if he's starting right away and May isn't. But yeah.
I think, dude, you know what? I'm gonna go hot take here, and it's not because I don't like Drake May, but until I see more from like the Patriots' commitment to being a better offense, I think you got to take Nix in both, because I do think Sean Payton is just going to give Nix easy plays to run. Like, if I told you that he had Russell Wilson's season last year, that's a really good season for a quarterback, for a rookie quarterback too. So I probably, and again, if I'm in Dynasty, I'm probably taking Drake May earlier because I love the talent more. But Bo Nix immediately is probably going to put up more points, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was just curious. Running back, receiver, tight end. My favorite is Lad McConkey. I talked about him already. And then I also really like AD Mitchell. I think he could be legit. I'm gonna bet on the talent there in AD Mitchell.
I like that, dude. I'm gonna go 2 receivers. Obviously, my number 1 is Brian Thomas Jr., and that's really because I think that there's a path for him to be the wide receiver 1. If all of his talent is what people think it is, he was the 4th receiver off the board for a reason. I think that he's got – imagine if he has Calvin Ridley's season but catches 3 more touchdowns. We'd be talking about a pretty dynamic wide receiver 2 at minimum, right? In Dynasty, the long term would be crazy. My other guy is Jermaine Burton. Like, I really do believe that guy's going to see a lot of playing time. I think he's going to be pissed that he got drafted as late as he did, and he's going to want to prove that narrative wrong. And I like the fit with Joe Burrow. Like you said before, offense can support multiple relevant receiving threats in fantasy. So I like both of those guys.
Yeah, and then my sleeper I touched on, I like Rasheen Ali in Baltimore as a deep sleeper. I just think whatever running back gets touches in that backfield is just automatically like an RB1, RB2.
I'll give you, dude, this is coming out of left field. Low key sleeper, and I'll whisper it. Eric All, Bengals tight end. I really think that there's a shot that this guy comes in. He's an athletic safety blanket. And again, I just think Joe Burrow, like you talk about the receivers that go to Mahomes and Allen, and we just automatically upgrade them. Joe Burrow got hurt, and we're like everybody's kind of forgotten about the Bengals. The Bengals have one of the best Super Bowl odds in Vegas right now. Like, I mean, after the Chiefs in the night, like they're up there. There's gonna be opportunities for this team to score. So I like Eric All, tight end out of Iowa, 4th round pick, number 115.
All right, dude. I mean, I don't know shit about Eric All, but I'll have to watch some film on him at some point.
Dude, Iowa tight ends. You don't need to ask any more questions.
Yeah, I will say people love Iowa tight ends. Yeah, that'll do it for our draft recaps. Like I said, we'll be back in the coming weeks doing big board rankings, et cetera, talking about dynasty, redraft, all that stuff. Best time of the year. I will. Until next time. Peace.